Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. I know there is a lot going on, obviously, internationally, protests all over America, but I hope we all still care about a good old-fashioned government cover-up. And we got one. That Status Coup is leading the charge, frankly, the only outlet that is exposing in East Palestine, Ohio, and parts of Western Pennsylvania. And it is being perpetrated by the federal government and the EPA. And frankly, even if you don't live there, this should matter to you because it's coming to a place near you soon if they get away with it here, just like they've gotten away with it in Flint, Michigan. Still a crisis 10 years later. If you missed it last week, I broke a story that the EPA, who has been saying for over a year, yeah, we're doing thorough testing. We're not detecting toxic vinyl chloride, which Norfolk Southern, the multi-billion-dollar railroad company, detonated 116,000 gallons of over East Palestine, Ohio. Yeah, we're not detecting it in our testing. Well, apparently they did detect it semi-recently in soil at the derailment site and just decided not to tell anyone. A resident that an EPA official had been talking to, an EPA official told the resident, and that resident sent it to us and asked, "Why haven't you told the public?" And that EPA official didn't quite have an answer that really makes any sense. Well, 3 days after I reached out to the EPA and asked, actually, excuse me, I reached out a week ago to the EPA about this. I asked very specific questions. What date did you detect this vinyl chloride in the soil? How deep in the soil did you detect it? Was groundwater threatened? Because if it's deep in the soil, it could seep into the groundwater. What equipment was used after you dug it out to test for it in the air? Because when you're digging it out, one would expect it doesn't just magically disappear. And if it goes into the air, it is a public health threat. Vinyl chloride is linked to a variety of cancers when you are exposed to it. Well, the EPA gave me a vague statement saying that they detected it in earlier spring and it was at low levels, but they would not provide the specific answers. Well, 3 days after I broke this story, the EPA, I would say rather quietly, announced on its website on a Friday that it had found three, count them, three, not one, three, quote, small areas where significant hazardous substance management operations occurred showed, quote, low levels of vinyl chloride present just above screening levels. So in an East Palestine, Ohio group, East Palestine Off the Rails, which I'm quite aware Norfolk Southern and the EPA both monitor. So if you post in there, know that they are monitoring it. Christina Sisiloff, who was the resident, she lives about 6 miles from East Palestine in Darlington, Pennsylvania. She was the one that the EPA official had texted acknowledging that vinyl chloride was detected. She wrote, this was posted on the EPA's website, so now the one vinyl chloride spot that I was informed of is suddenly now three. I emailed the EPA this morning. I mean, it's kind of just, as a journalist, you have to reach out, but I'm not expecting any actual answers considering they don't seem to want to be transparent about this issue, as shown by the fact that for over a year, telling residents we're not detecting vinyl chloride, they did detect vinyl chloride and just decided not to tell anyone. And I could only assume that they posted it on their website on Friday only after I broke the story. I reached out this morning with some basic questions I would think that are important to the residents of East Palestine as well as Western Pennsylvania, many of whom are very sick. That's not my opinion. I was just there. I could tell you many of them are very sick. I've interviewed residents who are having seizures that were perfectly healthy before this detonation of toxic cancer-causing chemicals over a year ago. Residents are having strokes, bloody noses, bloody stools, blood from their urine, dizziness, headaches, cognitive issues, brain fog, tingling throughout their body, burning lips. I mean, I could go down the list. We've reported on the list goes into the dozens of symptoms. And I asked the EPA, what were the levels? I asked them that a week ago. They will not tell me. They just say low levels. What dates were these detected? Did you detect this last week, or did you detect this month ago and just forgot to tell anyone? Forgot. How deep into the soil was the vinyl chloride? Because again, it doesn't just chill there. As weather changes, it moves down, possibly into the groundwater, or up into the air. Where were these 3 small areas? What testing equipment did you use to test? Because they dug it out, but then the EPA official told that resident, we didn't detect it in the air after we dug it out. Well, what equipment are you using? Because there's been a lot of questions and critiques of the EPA's testing equipment, and the EPA's own officials have said our testing equipment will not find certain low levels. And after digging it out, did you test for formaldehyde, carbon dioxide, and hydrochloric acid, which when you break down vinyl chloride, when it goes into the air, that's what it breaks down to several days later. Formaldehyde is not good in the air. As we know, carbon dioxide isn't either, and hydrochloric acid is not. And this might sound all kind of in the weeds, but the bottom line is the EPA, and a lot of people said, oh, the EPA went rogue when Trump became president. I could tell you the EPA has been rogue under Democrats, under Republicans, because basically the environmental agencies in our country that are sworn to protect you, your children, your animals, your water, your air, your land, has basically been sold to special interests. And they are now regulating to protect business and corporations like Norfolk Southern. Well, again, haven't heard back from the EPA on why they didn't notify anyone. And I'm also curious, how is it that in the original text messages, again, here's the text messages that the EPA official that we broke last week had sent to a local Darlington, Pennsylvania resident. She's had serious health issues living 6 miles away. Mark Durno with the EPA said, regarding the VC detection, the whole reason that we are doing this massive confirmation sampling, meaning testing around the derailment site, is to verify that the cleanup was complete. If we encounter an analysis of concern, we direct Norfolk Southern to deal with it. Yeah, that's who I want dealing with it. Also, you may want to let your folks know that the VC detection and dig out was on the north side of the tracks, not at Ceram Fab, which is a building by the derailment site. All has been good. First of all, why does she, the resident, need to, quote, tell her folks, why is the EPA not notifying the people who have been poisoned that they're detecting a seriously, significantly cancer-causing toxin in the soil, presumably 16 months later? It could have been earlier. We don't know when they detected it because they won't tell us. She asked them, no. She asked, did you notify the public? No, nothing was posted on our website. It's important to note that the VC was just above the very conservative screening level. She asked, what does the very conservative screening level mean? Is that the levels you sent us? She also asked, when you dig it up, can it be put into the air or would it just be contained? He said, well, the first question will take time to explain. Bottom line, though, they were set to be protective of groundwater. Okay, but then why won't the EPA tell me how deep in the soil they detected it and if groundwater was compromised? He also said, yeah, the levels are so low that any off-gassing would not be a concern, even to sensitive populations. In my report from last week that I broke this story, we have experts on the record calling that nonsense and that it is a threat when you're digging out supposedly low levels of vinyl chloride into the air. But interestingly enough, Mr. Durno, when he texted this resident, this was at the end of May, he didn't mention 3 areas of vinyl chloride. He mentioned 1. So benefit of the doubt, were there 2 more found after he sent this to her? I suspect not. I suspect, not reporting, I suspect that all 3 of these small areas were detected before he spoke with her. So why he only mentioned 1, I don't know. Why the EPA is not notifying the public, I think I do know. And I want to, for those of you that didn't read the story, and make sure you sign up to our Substack. You could sign up for free to get this reporting. I know it's not Trump versus Biden and the day-to-day food fight that the corporate media likes to push out there. But this is actual critical life or death information. And you might not live in East Palestine. You might not live in Western Pennsylvania. But if the EPA is literally covering up the toxic poisoning of communities, I kind of think that matters if something happens in your community. But I want to remind you, this is not some small thing, although the EPA is trying to make it seem like a small thing. I also want to tell you, not one outlet has reported what we broke, even though other outlets know it to be true and have confirmed it. This is from my story today in our Substack. The EPA has not answered any of those questions, nor did it provide any of the information on its website Friday when it revealed it had detected, quote, 3 small areas of low levels of vinyl chloride. We followed up this morning, nearly a week after Status Coup broke this critical public health information and that the EPA did not notify the public it found vinyl chloride in East Palestine. No mainstream or local Ohio or Pennsylvania news outlet has reported it. Status Coup is aware that the Associated Press and several other outlets are aware of this story and have confirmed it themselves, yet have still not reported it. We'll get to that in a minute. According to the National Cancer Institute, exposure to vinyl chloride poses a, quote, increased risk of a rare form of liver cancer, as well as primary liver cancer, brain and lung cancers, lymphoma, and leukemia. Experts have vehemently disagreed that the EPA's digging out of vinyl chloride posed no threat to residents' health and insist that the EPA reveal what exactly the, quote, low levels it found were. Quote, the dose makes the poison. Judith Zelikoff, a toxicologist at NYU's medical school, told Status Coup. She put it in all caps, by the way. Harvard-educated chemist Stephen Lesterd agreed that the public and experts need to know what the levels detected were. Quote, the idea that it will not be a concern to excavate the contaminated soil does not make sense. It flies in the face of what has been occurring in East Palestine since the derailment. Many people in the town became sensitized to the chemicals released into the air and waterway by the derailment. Digging this area up will release VC into the air and will pose health risks to the people living nearby, especially to the people who have become sensitized to the chemicals. This should not be ignored or brushed lightly aside. They're reluctant to share information and they're hiding what they find, hiding things they find. They should do an announcement with something like that to share it with the public and to share what they found in terms of the concentration. If they were to share the contamination numbers, other people might have a different opinion. They don't want me or anybody else who doesn't think along the same lines as they do to see these numbers because we might share a different opinion. And that creates political and community problems for them. In English, they say low levels. Well, we, the experts who are chemists, among other expertise, we might disagree that these are, quote, low levels that do not pose a public health threat, given the fact that there are residents sick all over this community, but the EPA says, that's just a coincidence. On Saturday, Attorney General of Ohio, Dave Yost, held a meeting with East Palestine residents about a variety of settlements, civil settlements, including the recent settlement between the EPA, federal government, and Norfolk Southern for $310 billion, which in my view is a pittance. I want to read to you, I want to show you a clip from that. This is East Palestine City Councilman Lenny Slavin talking basically about how the EPA and Norfolk Southern have been working hand in hand, not in a good way.
We must hold our federal Environmental Protection Agency accountable at the end of this as well.
Yeah!
The EPA is designed to provide security to the people and ensure that situations like these, they act in our best interest, not their own. However, we in East Palestine do not feel that way. The lack of timely and effective action from the EPA working in conjunction with Norfolk Southern has only exacerbated our suffering.
Did you get that? The lack of timely, let me read it verbatim. The EPA was designed to provide security to the people to ensure that in situations like these, they act in our best interests, not their own. However, we in East Palestine do not feel that way. The lack of timely and effective action from the EPA, working in conjunction with Norfolk Southern, has exacerbated our suffering and uncertainty. Listen, I understand we live in an ADHD country. We're all working hard, many working 2 to 3 jobs with kids. You got a flood of information being hurled at you between podcasts and TikTok and YouTube and cable news and, all over the place. It's hard. It is hard to keep focus on any one crisis. But the bottom line is we have a pattern here, and that is the EPA, along with state environmental agencies, are working with private entities and corporations from Flint to East Palestine to Kalamazoo to many other places to minimize or just cover up corporate poisoning of U.S. citizens. And it seems that the corporate media is literally hiding it from the public. There is no journalistic reason why no national media or local Ohio and Pennsylvania outlet has not reported on this. None. This is not like, oh, I'm working on some other thing, so I'll get to it later. This is critical public health information, life or death information about a toxic, cancerous chemical. And by the way, people are already being diagnosed with cancer in East Palestine. People who do not have family histories, including a man who had to get a double mastectomy for breast cancer, which is rare in men. We will stay on this important story. Please support us if you can. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as 16 cents a day.